Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. This is the second book in the Strange the Dreamer duology. If you have not read the first book, I will leave my review linked on the screen. Now, since this book takes place directly after the events of the first book, you kind of need to know things about the first book, so I wouldn't recommend watching this video if you have not read the first book. So this book directly follows the events of the first book, being that Sarai is now dead, and Minya has her in her grasp as a ghost soul that she is clinging onto. Laszlo is a god spawn and has a newfound power, and everyone's kind of trying to figure out what's going to happen now because Minya is sort of controlling everything because she controls Sarai, and everything is going from there. So I listened to this on audiobook, and I'm very glad that I chose to do that because I was finding myself kind of dreading reading the physical copy. I enjoyed Strange the Dreamer, especially towards the end, but I am not as enamored with it as many people are, and I struggled through the first half of it because it was kind of slow, so I was finding myself just not really wanting to pick up the second book, but listening to it on audio was great. I really enjoyed the narrator, and it was very atmospheric. First off, I'm going to talk about the world building. I really enjoyed that this book expanded a lot more on the world and the lore. World building and the lore and themes of things, I think, is something that Laini Taylor does really well, so I liked seeing a lot more of the world. That is what I found the most fascinating about the first book, that and some of the themes, which I'll talk about later. So seeing those things and seeing even more of those things, which I think is a strength of the series, was enjoyable for me. Next, let me talk about our characters. So I think one of the reasons for me, and I talked about this in my Strange the Dreamer review, I don't love Laszlo and Sarai. I sort of like them as individuals. I don't really buy their romance. I find it very insta-lovey, but Laini Taylor kind of does these insta-lovey type plots, so I'm sort of getting used to it at this point. But I found their relationship less jarring, I guess, for me, because it wasn't as much of a focus in this book as it was in the previous book. The previous book was them, like, meeting and falling in love, and it was a very big focus. This book, they had a lot more to deal with, and it was still there, but I was able to kind of gloss over it a little bit more because there was so much more going on. So that was enjoyable for me because I'm just not a big shipper of theirs. Something I really enjoy about this series and the characters is that everyone can be a villain to someone else, and it really shows how war makes monsters of us all. And this is something that Laini Taylor also did in Daughter of Smoke and Bone, but I think she does it even more in this series, and I really enjoy all of that because you get to see all these different characters who you're all kind of rooting for, and then how they view everybody else. And it just shows like how much trauma and loss and everything is a part of this world and this story. And I really enjoyed seeing different sides of these characters and different characters that we found to be villainous and are, but have reasons for that, and the true villains being so truly awful, but they're also being antagonists that are more redeemable, and all of that was really fun. I will say that some of the focus from the characters seemed to shift a bit in a way that I enjoyed, because some of the characters that were focused on a lot, again, in book one, I didn't quite enjoy as much, but I did find that there were some characters that were a very big focus of book one that we don't really see much of and were kind of lost and forgot about in book two. Again, for me, not that big of a problem because I didn't really care about them that much anyway, and I cared about a lot of the characters that were more of a focus in book two or were even introduced in book two. I found them very interesting, but I will say that there were some characters from book one that people might miss. And lastly, let me talk about the plot. As I mentioned, I found the first book to be very meandering. This I found a lot more focused, and I enjoyed a lot more because of that. The plot felt much cleaner and didn't feel like we were meandering and wasting so much time. Although I will say Laini Taylor still struggles with her pacing, especially towards the end of books. I feel like she sort of rushes to wrap everything up. And I have been told by Sarah Jane from Book Life, who saw her at a panel once, that she writes not really first drafts. She kind of goes over every individual line when she's writing it, so I feel like that makes it so by the time she gets to the end she's like, oh shit, and she has to like put everything kind of together in the end. I didn't notice this as much as I have with other books of hers, but it was still a thing that I noticed that she does, which makes her sentences and individual sentences very beautiful, but sometimes the actual like overarching plan and pacing of the plot can be a little bit jumbled and a little bit rushed, especially at the end. I also really enjoy what Laini Taylor does with themes. She especially is good about themes of war. Both of her series have had this theme of war and how it affects people, and I really enjoy what she does with that. And again, like I said with the characters, us seeing all the ramifications of that. This book, even more so than the first series and even the first book, focuses a lot more on trauma PTSD and recovery from trauma. So that was something that I really enjoyed seeing in this book and really following these characters and their recovery from the things that have happened to them. So overall, I very much enjoyed this book. I would say that I liked it even more than the first book. Kind of in retrospect, I would say that the first book was more of a 3-star for me. I gave it 4 stars at the time because I really did love the world so much, but I did find myself, like I said, dreading to read the second book because I just wasn't like as enamored with the world and everything after having some time away from it. But this second book, I would say, is a 4.5 stars for me. Still not perfect, has some flaws, but I enjoyed it much more and I'm very excited to see what Laini Taylor comes up with next. I will be doing a spoilery gush for this book, so if you want even more of my thoughts on everything and some of the things that we discovered about this world, go ahead and check that out. I will link it on the screen. So comment below, let me know what you thought of Muse of Nightmares. Thank you all for watching and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.